Look, I believe in our Constitution. Many of my colleagues know I've been in law enforcement a very long time. And there is no doubt that the constitutional rights of individuals not only impede some law enforcement efforts at times by design, because in fact law enforcement is a branch of the government, but also re-victimizes victims. So in the case of a person who is victimized, they become a victim of a crime. Subsequent to that, they have to recount that crime to a police officer to have action taken. Most times they have to go through some sort of arduous court process where they're either put on the stand at a trial and they have to recount it again, or there's a plea agreement, and then there's sentencing where they appear, and then there's appeals, and all of these things re-victimize the victim. And as unfortunate as that is, and as troubling as I find it, it is necessary in a free society. This system is created to protect the government from mistreating and wrongfully convicting the citizens of this country, and in this case, this state. So as difficult as it may be for victims and difficult for me as an advocate for victims, I understand it and I support those necessary steps. But once those necessary steps have been gone through and an individual has committed a crime, and specifically a crime of murder, which is taking the life of another person, which cannot be undone. At no point in time can the Board of Pardons and Parole or this legislature or the executive branch of government or anybody else undo a murder that has taken place. That individual is gone, and they are gone forever. They leave behind family members, loved ones, parents, siblings, children, a future that none of us will ever know because it's gone. So we're asked now to determine if this individual before us should be reaffirmed to continue to serve on the Board of Pardons and Paroles. And certainly we have heard, and we heard in the Judiciary Committee, many people who have gone to jail and rehabilitated themselves and come out, and God bless them. God bless an individual who goes to jail, sits in our DOC, and rehabilitates themselves and does something positive, like mentors young people who are coming in and heading out, or have gotten their GED, or their degree, or done something to better their lives. God bless them, and I am happy for them. Where I really have pause is when I hear individuals and some of my colleagues say, well, they made a mistake. Well, I make mistakes. Mistakes happen. But I submit to my colleagues in this legislature that the taking of another person's life intentionally is not a mistake. That is an act of violence, an act of vengeance, and again, an act that cannot be undone. So we've heard the success stories. But what I would like to share with you is some of the stories as to how those individuals ended up before the Board of Pardons and Parole. One individual shot and killed a 17-year-old who was found bleeding in his car from multiple gunshot wounds. He was found guilty by a trial, sentenced to 35 years, attempted to appeal his conviction, but it was upheld. The victim's family disagreed with the commutation. It was commuted from 35 years to 30. Another individual pled guilty to felony murder, where he killed an individual, attempted to appeal, was unsuccessful, 40-year sentence commuted down to 28. Another individual sentenced to 55 years when he used a sawed-off shotgun to kill somebody while he also attacked his girlfriend with a knife and actually reloaded to shoot his victim 2 more times, commuted from 55 years to 41 years. Another individual murdered someone, took his case to trial, was found guilty of murder and carrying a handgun without a permit. He appealed. He did not win his appeal. The victim's family protested the commutation, and the sentence was commuted from 45 years to 25 years. Another individual conspired with someone else to kill another person for monetary gain. That individual was found guilty after he used a belt to cause the death of this individual. The commutation from 40 years down to 28. Another individual murdered his own father by firearms, then fled the country before he was apprehended, brought back, convicted by jury, appealed. The appeal was denied. His sentence was commuted, 30 to 25. Another individual was sentenced to 40 years after he fired at a bar that he had been removed from earlier and shot and killed an innocent person that happened to be there. His sentence has been commuted from 40 to 30. Another individual shot and killed somebody, 2 people, found guilty of the murders and carrying a pistol without a permit, appealed, was found guilty again, and had their sentence knocked down from 100 years to 42 years and 9 months. Another committed a felony with a handgun, illegal possession of a handgun, after he, with an accomplice, shot and killed somebody, shot them multiple times. The Supreme Court upheld that conviction. That individual had their sentence commuted from 55 to 43 years and 8 months. Another individual shot and killed a 29-year-old inside an apartment. That sentence was commuted from 30 years to 20 years, 1 month. Another individual convicted by jury, shooting somebody 5 times, including 2 shots while the person was down and laying on the ground. The appellate court upheld the conviction. That was commuted from 50 years to 30 years. Another convicted in 2007 for their role in a killing, fired 16 bullets at the individual, striking him in the back of the head, killing him. Had that original sentence of 55 years, not to be suspended after 35, commuted down to 19 years. Another had a jury conviction for a murder. Supreme Court reviewed it, did not take up the case, commuted from 60 years to 41 years, 3 months. Another, with an accomplice, murdered somebody. Had the appellate court hold it up, modification from 45 to 25 years. Another individual shot and killed 2 people. Guilty by trial at jury, had their sentence modified from 30 years down to 26 and 8 months. Another individual was one of 4 who shot and killed a 13-year-old girl when they were involved in gunfire and an errant bullet struck and killed that young lady. Had his sentence reduced from 40 to 20 years after a conviction. Another individual convicted of murder by a jury of killing a 16-year-old. Had the Supreme Court uphold the verdict, and that sentence was commuted from 43 years down to 27 years. Another individual shot and killed somebody outside of a club, fled the state, was arrested twice in other states, originally sentenced to 60 years after a conviction and a sentence review decision that did not go in the individual's favor. Yet another opportunity that we afford people. Had their sentence commuted from 60 years to 40 years and 9 months. Another individual with an extensive criminal background history, extensive criminal history, beat and stabbed an individual. Appellate court upheld the conviction by jury, and his sentence was commuted, 55 years to 27 years and 10 months. Another gunned down an individual after a apparent gang dispute. Supreme Court affirmed the trial court's conviction. Sentence was modified from 60 years to 40 years. Another fired into a group of people, killing an innocent bystander. Convicted by jury. Appealed, the appellate court affirmed. Sentence was commuted from 50 years down to 30 years. Another individual shot and killed somebody during an altercation in a parking lot. Was convicted, sentenced to 45 years, and that was commuted down to 25 years and 2 months. Another individual murdered the mother of his children. Had a sentence, was convicted, appealed, lost, had a sentence review, lost that, and then had his conviction or his sentence commuted from 45 years to 25 years and 9 months. Another one, shot and killed somebody when he shot him in the face and then set him on fire. Convicted, found guilty, sought a sentence modification, and he was denied. His original sentence, 70 years. Commuted down to 26. Shot somebody and set him on fire. Another individual shot somebody, was found guilty by trial. Appealed, did not win, had their 45-year sentence reduced to 28 years. Another shot and killed an individual, convicted, admitted that he did it for a, quote, no apparent reason. So his appeal to have the sentence reduced was denied, and his sentence was then commuted by the Board of Pardons and Parole from 60 years to 25 years. I'll skip a few in the interest of time, Madam Speaker. Another individual sentenced to 75 years after he killed 2 people during a crime spree. He had his sentence commuted. He was released on compassionate leave and went home to strangle his girlfriend. Another individual killed somebody with a shotgun blast to the head. Sentence was convicted following a jury trial, applied for a sentence review, was denied, had his 60-year sentence reduced to 25 years by the Board of Pardons and Paroles for commutations. Another individual shot and killed a 16-year-old near a playground, pled guilty, eventually was convicted, pled guilty to murder, had a 45-year sentence, has since been commuted to 25 years. And Madam Speaker, these are difficult stories to recount. And as difficult as they are for me to recount, and as difficult as they may be for some of my colleagues to hear, it fails in comparison, to what some of the victims, not all, but some of the victims' families feel. And in fact, I had an event in my district, and a parent came all the way from across the state to my district to talk to me at the event, to tell me how so upset they are with this because their daughter was brutally murdered, and the individual who murdered her may be eligible for one of these commutations, and just how upsetting that is to their family. We have a criminal justice system for a reason. All of us spend a lot of time here to create laws that are in the best interest of the people of Connecticut, and we need to enforce them. And it's not always pretty. And I understand that as well as anybody in this room. But the reality is, for these sentences all to have been commuted within a 2-year time frame, whereas in years past we would commute 1 or 2. And certainly I skipped some that have been commuted in those 2 years because 2-3 years were taken off the sentence. You can understand that. You can even understand, as my colleague said, somebody does something when they're 15, 16 years old, and they get a commutation for 5, 8 years off of their sentence later on in life when they've proven that they've done better. I can understand that too. But for me to stand here and put my stamp of approval effectively on this process and the commutations that have happened during that 2-year time is not only, in my opinion, a slap in the face of our criminal justice system, but it does not bode well for the safety and well-being of the people of Connecticut. We've talked a lot about a new policy, a regulation, or practice, or protocol, or call it what you will. That's not the question before us. The question before us is the nomination of this individual for confirmation by this legislative body. And the actual question is, did this individual perform to the standard of the expectations of the people of the state of Connecticut? So we've heard that he's a great human being. We've heard that he uses good judgment. We've heard that he's had extensive training. Is that the measure that we use for every profession? If we have professions in this state of people who are good people and have good training, but exercise poor judgment and don't do their job to the expectation of the people of the state of Connecticut, do we let that fly? And I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. So with the cases that I laid out earlier, that to me is the question. Did this individual perform to the standards expected by the people of the state of Connecticut? Do the people of the state of Connecticut feel that it's appropriate to commute all of those murdering sentences as I laid out earlier? That's really the question before us. And my answer is no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.